If you have few or no friends, the world will quickly tell you that something is wrong with you. People will ask why you are always alone. They will assume you are shy, difficult, antisocial, or somehow incomplete. They will look at your quiet life and mistake it for an empty one. But what if they are wrong? What if the silence they pity is actually the place where your greatest strengths are being forged? What if your solitude is not a weakness, but evidence that you are becoming someone who values truth more than popularity, peace more than noise, and purpose more than approval? The modern world celebrates numbers. It celebrates the number of followers, the number of contacts, the number of invitations, and the number of people who recognize your face. It teaches you that if many people know you, then you must be important. Yet history repeatedly proves the opposite. The strongest minds have rarely depended on the crowd. They have depended on clarity. They have depended on discipline. They have depended on the courage to walk a path that very few were willing to take. Many people are surrounded by others every single day, yet they feel completely alone. They laugh in groups while hiding their pain. They constantly receive messages, but have no one who truly understands them. They spend years trying to fit into places where they never truly belong. Their loneliness has nothing to do with being alone. It comes from living a life disconnected from themselves. Being alone is completely different. Solitude is not the absence of people. It is the presence of yourself. It is the opportunity to hear your own thoughts before the world tells you what to think. It is the space where your values become stronger than public opinion. It is where your identity stops depending on applause and starts depending on character. If your circle is small, there is a good chance you have already discovered something many people never learn. Not every relationship deserves your time. Not every invitation deserves your presence. Not every conversation deserves your attention. Your life becomes lighter the moment you stop believing that everyone deserves access to your peace. The first rare trait is independent thinking. Most people allow the crowd to decide what is acceptable, fashionable, and successful. They rarely stop to ask whether those beliefs actually make sense. Independent thinkers refuse to surrender their minds. They question everything. They seek truth instead of comfort. They are willing to stand alone if standing alone means remaining honest with themselves. This independence often reduces the number of people who understand them, but it increases the quality of every decision they make. The second rare trait is deep self-awareness. Solitude forces you to face yourself. There is nowhere to hide when the room becomes quiet. Your fears appear, your habits become visible, your excuses lose their power. Instead of escaping into endless distractions, you begin studying your own mind. You learn why certain situations trigger you. You discover the beliefs that have silently controlled your life for years. Little by little, you stop blaming the world and start improving yourself. This kind of growth cannot happen when every waking moment is filled with noise. The third rare trait is the ability to protect your energy. Many people confuse kindness with endless availability. They believe saying yes to everyone makes them good people. Eventually, they become exhausted because they spend their lives carrying burdens that were never theirs. A person who values solitude understands that peace is earned through boundaries. They know when to walk away from drama. They know when silence is wiser than argument. They know that protecting their mental and emotional well-being is not selfish. It is necessary. The fourth rare trait is emotional resilience. When you spend time alone, you learn how to survive difficult moments without depending on constant reassurance. You become your own source of encouragement. You discover that setbacks do not define you. Rejection does not destroy you. Criticism does not control you. Every challenge teaches you patience. Every disappointment strengthens your character. While others panic when life becomes uncertain, you remain steady because your foundation was built during seasons of solitude. The fifth rare trait is purpose. Many people drift through life because they spend more time chasing acceptance than chasing meaning. They constantly adjust themselves to fit someone else's expectations. In doing so, they slowly forget who they are. Solitude interrupts this cycle. It asks difficult questions. What kind of person are you becoming? What principles guide your life? What legacy will remain long after your name is forgotten? These questions cannot be answered by a crowd. They can only be answered in moments of honest reflection. This is why quiet people are often misunderstood. Society mistakes silence for insecurity because it has forgotten what confidence truly looks like. Real confidence does not demand attention. It does not interrupt every conversation. It does not seek approval from every stranger. Genuine confidence is calm. It listens before speaking. It observes before acting. It remains humble while others compete for recognition. It has nothing to prove because it already knows its value. There will always be people who misunderstand your quiet nature. Some will call you distant simply because you refuse to participate in gossip. Others will call you arrogant because you protect your time. Some will assume you think you are better than everyone else when the truth is much simpler. You have simply learned that your peace is too valuable to exchange for temporary acceptance. One authentic friend is worth more than 100 superficial acquaintances. One honest conversation is worth more than countless meaningless exchanges. One relationship built on trust can strengthen your spirit more than years spent chasing popularity. Depth has always been more valuable than numbers, even if the world refuses to admit it. Your solitude is also preparing you in ways you cannot yet see. Every quiet morning teaches discipline. Every evening spent reflecting develops wisdom. Every challenge faced without running away builds resilience. Every moment of self-examination strengthens your character. While others are distracted by constant entertainment, you are building something invisible that will eventually become undeniable. Do not mistake a smaller circle for a smaller life. Some of the greatest transformations happen when nobody is watching. The strongest trees grow deep roots before they grow tall branches. The sharpest swords are forged in intense heat before they are ever placed into someone's hands. In the same way, strong character is developed away from applause, away from crowds, and away from the need to impress anyone. There may be seasons when you question your path. You may wonder why genuine people seem so difficult to find. During those moments, remember that becoming rare often requires walking roads that few are willing to travel. Ordinary paths create ordinary results. Extraordinary lives are usually built in extraordinary silence. As you continue growing, your standards will naturally rise. You will stop chasing people who only appear when they need something. You will stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You will stop apologizing for protecting your peace. The relationships that remain will be built on honesty instead of convenience, loyalty instead of usefulness, and respect instead of obligation. The right people rarely arrive when you are desperately searching for them. They often appear when you have become secure enough to live without needing anyone's approval. By then, your confidence comes from your values instead of compliments. Your happiness comes from purpose instead of popularity. Your peace comes from within instead of from the changing opinions of others. So if you have few or no friends, do not immediately assume you are losing at life. Ask yourself a different question. Are you becoming wiser? Are you becoming stronger? Are you becoming more disciplined? Are you becoming more honest with yourself? Are you protecting your peace instead of chasing attention? If the answer is yes, then your solitude is not your punishment. It is your preparation. The world may count people, but life measures character, and the greatest victories are often achieved long before anyone else notices them. Many people fear being alone because they have been taught that a full life must always be surrounded by people. From childhood, success is often measured by the number of friends, invitations, conversations, and social connections someone has. As a result, the moment life becomes quieter, many immediately assume something is wrong. They mistake silence for emptiness and solitude for rejection. But being alone and being lonely are two completely different experiences. One is a physical condition, while the other is an emotional state. You can stand in a crowded room filled with laughter and still feel completely lonely. You can also sit quietly in a room by yourself and experience a deep sense of peace that no crowd could ever provide. Loneliness begins when you lose connection with yourself. It is not created by the absence of people, but by the absence of meaning, purpose, and inner harmony. A person who constantly depends on others for happiness often feels anxious whenever no one is around because they have never learned how to enjoy their own company. Their thoughts become their enemies instead of their companions. Every quiet moment feels uncomfortable because they have built their identity on external attention rather than internal stability. Being alone offers something that constant social activity can never provide. It creates space to hear your own thoughts without interruption. It allows you to understand what truly matters to you instead of constantly reacting to everyone else's opinions. In solitude, you begin to recognize the difference between what the world expects from you and what your heart genuinely desires. This clarity is difficult to find in a life filled with endless noise, notifications, and distractions. The strongest people are often those who have learned to sit with themselves without feeling the need to escape. They do not rush to fill every silent moment with entertainment or conversation. Instead, they become comfortable with stillness. In that stillness, they discover hidden strengths, unanswered questions, forgotten dreams, and lessons that would never appear in a busy schedule. Solitude becomes a teacher rather than a punishment. Many people chase friendships simply because they fear being seen as alone. They tolerate disrespect, dishonesty, and one-sided relationships because they believe any company is better than no company. But peace is always more valuable than forced companionship. A quiet evening spent protecting your energy is worth far more than hours spent pretending to belong where you are not appreciated. Choosing solitude over unhealthy relationships is not weakness. It is evidence of growing self-respect. When you become comfortable being alone, you stop making desperate decisions. You no longer seek approval from everyone you meet. Compliments become pleasant but unnecessary. Criticism becomes easier to handle because your worth no longer depends on someone else's opinion. You begin making choices based on your values instead of your fears. That kind of confidence cannot be borrowed from friends, followers, or strangers. It is built in moments when no one is watching. Solitude also reveals your habits with complete honesty. Without distractions, you notice how you speak to yourself, how you respond to challenges, and what occupies your mind when the world becomes quiet. These moments expose both your strengths and your weaknesses. They provide an opportunity to replace negative thinking with discipline, gratitude, and self-awareness. Growth often begins in silence, because silence removes every excuse to avoid yourself. People who are comfortable alone usually become better listeners, deeper thinkers, and more intentional in their relationships. They no longer chase every opportunity to socialize because they understand the value of protecting their peace. When they choose to spend time with others, it is because the connection is genuine rather than convenient. Their friendships become stronger because they are based on respect instead of dependency. There is also a remarkable freedom that comes from no longer fearing solitude. You can travel without needing constant company. You can pursue your goals without waiting for someone else's approval. You can spend time learning, reading, creating, exercising, reflecting, or simply observing the world without feeling incomplete. Your happiness becomes something you carry within yourself instead of something you constantly search for in other people. The world often celebrates those who are constantly surrounded by others, yet many of the greatest ideas, discoveries, works of art, and personal transformations were born in moments of quiet reflection. Solitude gives the mind room to breathe. It allows wisdom to replace confusion and purpose to replace distraction. Instead of asking who will stay beside you every moment, you begin asking whether you are becoming someone whose own company is peaceful, honest, disciplined, and deeply fulfilling in a world where popularity is often treated as proof of success. Many people spend their lives trying to be noticed. They measure their worth by the number of people who know their name, the messages they receive, the invitations they accept, or the approval they collect. They become experts at attracting attention, but strangers to themselves. Rare minds choose a different path. They understand that being admired by many is far less valuable than being deeply understood by a few. They are not interested in collecting people. They are interested in discovering genuine connection. A person with a rare mindset does not enter every room asking, "How can I make everyone like me?" Instead, they quietly observe, listen, and ask a different question: who here values honesty, character, and truth? This simple shift changes everything. Instead of building relationships based on convenience or appearances, they build them on trust, mutual respect, and shared values. These connections take longer to form, but they are far more difficult to break. Depth requires patience, and patience is becoming increasingly rare. Modern culture rewards speed. Quick conversations replace meaningful dialogue. Endless scrolling replaces thoughtful reflection. Surface-level interactions become the norm because they demand very little effort. Rare minds resist this pattern. They understand that meaningful conversations cannot be rushed. Trust is not built overnight. Real friendship is not created by constant contact, but by consistent sincerity over time. Because they value depth, they are careful about who they allow into their inner world. They know that every relationship influences their thoughts, emotions, and habits. Rather than surrounding themselves with people who constantly seek drama, gossip, or competition, they look for individuals who encourage growth, wisdom, and accountability. They recognize that protecting their peace sometimes means limiting access to their time and energy. Many people misunderstand this selectiveness. They mistake quiet confidence for arrogance or emotional distance. They assume someone with only a few close friends must be lonely or antisocial. In reality, rare minds simply refuse to lower their standards for the sake of fitting in. They would rather enjoy one authentic conversation than spend an entire day exchanging empty words. They know that loneliness is not cured by noise, but by meaningful connection. Popularity often encourages people to wear masks. They begin changing their opinions to avoid conflict, hiding their true personalities to gain acceptance, and pretending to enjoy things they secretly dislike. Every new audience demands a different version of themselves. Over time, they forget which version is real. Rare minds reject this exhausting cycle. They understand that authenticity naturally attracts the right people, while gently pushing away those who only appreciate appearances. This willingness to remain authentic sometimes comes at a cost. There will be moments when they stand alone because they refuse to follow the crowd. They may lose opportunities, friendships, or approval simply because they choose integrity over acceptance. Yet they understand that temporary isolation is far less painful than spending years pretending to be someone they are not. Their self-respect becomes stronger than their desire to be liked. Depth also shapes the way they communicate. They do not feel the need to speak simply to fill silence. They choose words carefully because they know that language has power. When they ask someone how they are doing, they genuinely care about the answer. When they offer encouragement, it comes from sincerity rather than obligation. Their conversations often leave people feeling heard, respected, and understood because they give their full attention instead of dividing it between countless distractions. A rare mind also seeks depth within itself. It spends time reflecting on mistakes, questioning beliefs, improving habits, and understanding emotions. Instead of blaming the world for every challenge, it asks what lesson can be learned. This habit of honest self-examination creates wisdom that cannot be gained through constant external validation. Growth becomes more important than recognition, and character becomes more valuable than reputation. These individuals are also less likely to compare themselves with others. They understand that every person's journey unfolds at a different pace. While others compete for attention, they compete with yesterday's version of themselves. Their greatest victories are often invisible because they happen within the mind. Becoming calmer under pressure, more disciplined in daily habits, more forgiving after disappointment, and more focused despite distractions are achievements that rarely receive applause but permanently transform a person's life. As they continue to value depth over popularity, their circle may remain small, but the quality of those relationships becomes extraordinary. The people who remain are not there because of status, convenience, or entertainment. They stay because trust has been earned through honesty, loyalty, and shared growth. Every conversation carries meaning, every silence feels comfortable, and every connection is built on something that does not disappear when circumstances change. Rare minds understand that a meaningful life is never measured by the number of names in a contact list, but by the strength, sincerity, and lasting impact of the few hearts that truly know who they are. Many people assume that someone who spends a great deal of time alone must be missing something. They imagine solitude as a sign of isolation, rejection, or social failure. What they often fail to see is that behind intentional solitude are qualities that take years to develop. These qualities are not loud, flashy, or easily recognized. They grow quietly through self-reflection, discipline, and experience. A person who is comfortable walking alone has often built strengths that cannot be seen at first glance. Their life may appear simple from the outside, but beneath that quiet exterior are rare traits that shape every decision they make. The first rare trait is independent thinking. Most people naturally absorb the opinions of those around them. They follow trends, repeat popular beliefs, and make choices based on social approval. A person who embraces solitude has the opportunity to step away from this constant influence. They learn to examine ideas instead of accepting them without question. They ask themselves what they truly believe rather than what others expect them to believe. Their decisions are guided by principles instead of pressure. This independence allows them to remain calm even when the crowd moves in a different direction, because they have learned to trust thoughtful judgment over popular opinion. The second rare trait is deep self-awareness. Solitude removes distractions and leaves a person face to face with their own thoughts. At first, This can be uncomfortable because there is no one else to blame, impress, or imitate. Over time, however, this quiet environment becomes a place of discovery. A self-aware person recognizes both strengths and weaknesses with honesty. They notice recurring habits, emotional patterns, fears, and motivations. Instead of avoiding uncomfortable truths, they use them as opportunities for growth. They understand that lasting improvement begins with honest observation, not denial. This awareness gives them emotional clarity that many people never develop because they are constantly distracted by external noise. The third rare trait is strong personal boundaries. Someone who values solitude learns that peace is precious. They become careful about where they invest their time, attention, and emotional energy. They no longer feel obligated to attend every gathering, respond to every request, or maintain relationships that drain their spirit. This does not mean they lack kindness or compassion. It means they understand that protecting their inner peace is essential for living with purpose. They can say no without guilt because they recognize that every unnecessary commitment takes time away from what truly matters. Their boundaries are built from self-respect rather than selfishness. The fourth rare trait is emotional resilience. Life inevitably brings disappointment, betrayal, failure, and loss. Many people depend entirely on others to help them recover from these difficult moments. While support is valuable, a person shaped by solitude develops an inner foundation that remains steady even when external circumstances become uncertain. They learn how to process pain without allowing it to define them. They understand that emotions deserve acknowledgement, but should not control every decision. Instead of reacting impulsively, they pause, reflect, and respond with greater wisdom. Every challenge strengthens their ability to remain composed under pressure. This resilience is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to move forward despite it. The fifth rare trait is purpose-driven living. People who constantly seek approval often lose sight of their own direction because they are too busy meeting everyone else's expectations. Solitude creates the space to identify what truly matters. A purpose-driven individual understands that every day is an opportunity to become a better version of themselves. They invest time in learning, practicing, improving, and serving, rather than endlessly chasing entertainment or validation. Their goals are not shaped by comparison, but by conviction. They measure success by progress, character, and fulfillment instead of applause or recognition. This sense of purpose gives their life stability because it comes from within rather than from changing circumstances. These 5 traits work together in powerful ways. Independent thinking protects a person from blindly following the crowd. Self-awareness reveals where growth is still needed. Healthy boundaries preserve energy for meaningful pursuits. Emotional resilience provides strength during life's inevitable storms. Purpose gives every action direction and meaning. Together, they create a mindset that is difficult to shake because it is built from inner discipline rather than external approval. People who possess these qualities rarely feel the need to prove themselves. They understand that confidence does not require constant attention. They are comfortable allowing their actions to speak louder than their words. They celebrate the success of others without feeling threatened because their identity is not built on comparison. They listen more than they argue, observe more than they judge, and think more than they react. Their quiet presence often carries more influence than the loudest voice in the room, because genuine strength is rarely announced. Solitude does not magically create these qualities, but it provides the environment where they can grow. Every moment spent alone becomes an opportunity to sharpen the mind, strengthen the heart, and clarify one's purpose. While others may see only silence, those who understand its value recognize that within that silence, a person is building wisdom, discipline, resilience, character, and a life guided by principles that remain unshaken regardless of how many people choose to walk beside them. Modern society often rewards visibility more than substance. The loudest voice is frequently mistaken for the wisest. The most outgoing person is assumed to be the most confident, and those who constantly share their thoughts are often viewed as natural leaders. In such an environment, quiet people are easily misunderstood. Their silence is interpreted as weakness, their reserve is mistaken for insecurity, and their thoughtful nature is confused with indifference. Yet silence rarely reveals a lack of strength. More often, it reflects a level of self-control that many people never develop. A quiet person does not feel the need to speak simply to prove they exist. They understand that words carry weight, and because of this, they choose them carefully. While others rush to respond, they pause to observe. While many people seek attention, they seek understanding. This difference can make them appear distant, but in reality, they are often paying closer attention than anyone else in the room. They notice small changes in behavior, subtle emotions in conversations, and details that are overlooked by those who are too busy trying to be heard. Society tends to associate confidence with constant expression. From an early age, children are encouraged to raise their hands first, speak louder, and become more outgoing. Although communication is valuable, this creates the mistaken belief that silence must be a problem to fix. Quiet individuals grow up hearing that they should come out of their shell, as though their natural personality is incomplete. They are pressured to imitate louder personalities instead of recognizing the unique strengths they already possess. One of the biggest misconceptions is that quiet people lack confidence. True confidence, however, does not depend on being the center of attention. It comes from knowing your values, trusting your judgment, and remaining secure regardless of whether others are watching. A person who constantly seeks approval often speaks to gain acceptance, while someone who is genuinely confident does not feel obligated to fill every silence. Their sense of worth comes from within rather than from applause. Another reason quiet people are misunderstood is because they refuse to participate in unnecessary drama. Many conversations revolve around gossip, complaints, or competition. Quiet individuals often choose not to contribute because they see little value in spreading negativity. Their silence can be mistaken for arrogance or lack of interest, but their intention is often to protect their peace. They understand that every unnecessary argument steals energy that could be invested in something meaningful. Quiet people also value listening more than speaking. Listening is one of the rarest skills in today's world because many people are preparing their next response before the other person has even finished talking. A quiet person gives others the opportunity to express themselves completely. This habit builds deeper understanding and stronger relationships, yet it often goes unnoticed because listening attracts far less attention than speaking. The value they bring to conversations is measured by quality rather than quantity. There is also a tendency to judge people based on first impressions. Someone who enters a room with enthusiasm and speaks confidently is immediately labeled as friendly and capable. Someone who observes quietly may be described as shy, cold, or uninterested before saying a single word. These assumptions are rarely accurate. Many quiet individuals simply prefer to understand their surroundings before revealing themselves. They believe trust should be earned rather than given immediately, and they recognize that careful observation often prevents unnecessary disappointment. Quiet people often develop rich inner lives because they spend more time reflecting than reacting. They analyze experiences, question assumptions, and think deeply about their decisions. While others may chase constant stimulation, they appreciate moments of stillness that allow ideas to mature. Some of history's greatest thinkers, inventors, writers, and leaders spent long periods in reflection before taking action. Their influence did not come from speaking the most, but from thinking with clarity and purpose. Another reason society misunderstands quiet individuals is because many people feel uncomfortable with silence. Silence creates space for reflection, and reflection can expose truths that people would rather avoid. To escape discomfort, conversations become filled with unnecessary words. A quiet person, however, is not threatened by silence. They understand that silence can communicate respect, patience, wisdom, and self-control. They know that not every moment requires a response, and that some of the most meaningful insights emerge when the mind is calm rather than crowded. Because quiet people are selective with their relationships, others sometimes assume they are unfriendly or antisocial. In reality, they simply value authenticity over popularity. They would rather invest deeply in a few trustworthy relationships than spread themselves across countless superficial connections. Their loyalty runs deep because they do not form friendships casually. Once trust is established, they often become dependable companions who offer honesty, stability, and thoughtful support instead of empty promises. The world may continue to celebrate those who are loudest, but true influence has never belonged exclusively to those who speak the most. Quiet people often lead through consistency instead of charisma, through character instead of performance, and through thoughtful action instead of constant attention. Their calm presence, careful judgment, patient listening, and unwavering integrity create a strength that cannot always be seen immediately, but leaves a lasting impression on everyone fortunate enough to truly understand them. Solitude becomes powerful the moment you stop seeing it as something that has happened to you, and begin seeing it as something that can shape you. Many people experience periods of being alone, but very few know how to use those moments wisely. They spend their quiet hours wishing for more distractions, more conversations, or more people to fill the silence. As a result, they miss one of life's greatest opportunities. Solitude is not empty space waiting to be filled. It is fertile ground where discipline, wisdom, and inner strength can grow without interruption. Every moment spent alone gives you a choice. You can allow your mind to wander toward regret, comparison, and self-pity, or you can direct that same energy toward becoming stronger than you were yesterday. The difference is not found in your circumstances, but in your perspective. The same room that feels like a prison to one person becomes a place of transformation for another. The environment remains unchanged, but the mindset changes everything. One of the greatest gifts of solitude is freedom from constant influence. Every day the world competes for your attention. People offer opinions about how you should live, what you should value, and who you should become. Without realizing it, many begin living according to expectations that are not their own. Solitude creates distance from this endless noise. It gives you the chance to ask difficult questions about your life without someone else's voice answering first. You begin discovering what truly matters instead of what is merely popular. This quiet environment is also where discipline is built. Discipline rarely develops in moments of excitement. It is formed during ordinary days when no one is watching and no applause is waiting. Waking up early, exercising consistently, reading instead of endlessly scrolling, practicing a skill, learning something new, and honoring commitments to yourself all become easier when you stop depending on external motivation. Solitude removes many distractions and leaves only you and your choices. Over time, those choices become habits, and those habits shape your character. Many people fear being alone because they are forced to face themselves. In silence, there are no crowds to distract you from your thoughts. Old fears, mistakes, and insecurities often rise to the surface. While this can feel uncomfortable, it is also where healing begins. You cannot strengthen what you refuse to examine. Solitude invites honesty. It encourages you to recognize destructive habits, forgive past failures, and replace limiting beliefs with healthier ones. Instead of running from yourself, you gradually become someone you respect. Solitude also sharpens your ability to think clearly. Constant conversation and endless entertainment can leave the mind crowded with borrowed opinions. When the noise fades, your own ideas become easier to hear. Creativity often appears in quiet moments because the mind finally has room to explore. Solutions to difficult problems emerge not through panic, but through patient reflection. Many of the world's greatest achievements began with someone sitting quietly, thinking deeply, and refusing to be distracted. Another strength developed in solitude is emotional independence. When your happiness depends entirely on the presence or approval of others, your emotions remain fragile. Every compliment lifts you, and every criticism breaks you. Solitude teaches a different lesson. It reminds you that peace can exist without constant validation. You learn to encourage yourself when no one else does. You celebrate your own progress without waiting for recognition. Your confidence slowly becomes rooted in your values rather than in other people's opinions. Time alone also allows you to invest in personal growth without comparison. Instead of measuring your life against someone else's achievements, you begin focusing on your own journey. You notice small improvements that others may never see. Your patience grows stronger. Your reactions become calmer. Your decisions become wiser. These invisible victories create lasting confidence because they are earned through consistent effort rather than temporary success. As your inner world becomes stronger, your relationships also begin to change. You no longer seek people simply to avoid loneliness. You choose relationships that reflect mutual respect, honesty, and encouragement. Because you are no longer desperate for acceptance, you become more selective about who receives your trust. This protects your peace while allowing genuine connections to grow naturally instead of being forced. There comes a point when solitude no longer feels like separation, but preparation. Every quiet morning becomes a chance to strengthen your mind. Every peaceful evening becomes an opportunity to reflect on your actions. Every challenge faced alone becomes evidence that your resilience is growing. Instead of fearing empty moments, you begin welcoming them because you understand they are shaping a version of yourself that is calmer, wiser, more disciplined, more focused, and capable of standing firmly regardless of who chooses to walk beside you. Many people spend years searching for the right people while ignoring the person they are becoming. They believe happiness will arrive when they find loyal friends, supportive partners, or people who finally understand them. They spend endless energy trying to be accepted, admired, and included. But life often works in the opposite direction. The right people rarely appear because you desperately chase them. They appear because you become someone whose character naturally attracts meaningful relationships. The greatest transformation begins when your focus shifts from finding the right people to becoming the right person. Every relationship you build reflects the standards you have for yourself. When your self-worth is low, you often accept disrespect because you fear being alone. You tolerate dishonesty because you believe you cannot do better. You remain in one one-sided relationships because you confuse attention with love. These choices are rarely made from wisdom. They are made from insecurity. The moment you begin respecting yourself, your standards begin to rise. You stop asking, "Who will stay with me?" and begin asking, "Who deserves a place in my life?" Becoming your best self does not mean becoming flawless. It means becoming intentional. It means waking up each day with the decision to improve your habits, strengthen your character, and become a little wiser than you were yesterday. Small actions repeated consistently create extraordinary change. Reading instead of wasting hours on distractions, speaking with honesty instead of pretending, practicing discipline instead of seeking comfort, and choosing patience instead of reacting emotionally slowly reshape the person you become. As your character changes, the people around you begin to change as well. Many individuals make the mistake of changing themselves just to gain acceptance. They hide their opinions, silence their dreams, and imitate the personalities of those around them because they fear rejection. For a while, this may help them fit in, but it never allows them to belong. People can only connect deeply with the real version of you. Every mask you wear attracts people who love the mask instead of the person beneath it. Authenticity may reduce the number of people in your life, but it greatly increases the quality of those who remain. As you grow, you begin noticing qualities that once escaped your attention. You recognize honesty faster than charm. You value consistency more than exciting promises. You appreciate humility more than popularity. The people who once impressed you no longer influence you because your priorities have changed. You realize that good character shines brighter than good appearances, and that loyalty is more valuable than temporary excitement. Personal growth also teaches you patience. Many people become discouraged when they experience seasons of loneliness. They assume that because their circle has become smaller, they must be moving backward. In reality, growth often requires separation. Old habits disappear before new ones develop. Outdated relationships fade before healthier ones appear. There is often a quiet period where life seems empty, but that emptiness is creating space for something better. Just as a gardener removes dead branches to help a tree grow stronger, life sometimes removes certain people so healthier relationships can eventually take root. One of the greatest signs of maturity is becoming comfortable with your own company. When you no longer fear solitude, you stop making desperate decisions. You no longer chase people who repeatedly ignore your value. You no longer beg for attention or force conversations that have no sincerity. Your confidence becomes calm because it is no longer dependent on constant approval. This quiet confidence is naturally attractive because it reflects emotional stability rather than emotional neediness. People who are committed to self-improvement also become more dependable. They keep their promises. They accept responsibility for their mistakes. They continue learning even after achieving success. They inspire trust because their actions remain consistent with their words. These qualities create relationships built on respect instead of convenience. Others feel safe around them because authenticity creates security that manipulation never can. As your purpose becomes clearer, you also become more selective with your time. You begin understanding that every hour invested in meaningless conflict is an hour stolen from your future. Instead of arguing with people determined to misunderstand you, you invest your energy in learning, creating, improving, and serving. Your life gains direction, and people who share that same direction naturally become part of your journey. Shared values create stronger relationships than shared hobbies alone. The right people are not looking for perfection either. They are looking for sincerity. They appreciate someone who is honest enough to admit mistakes, disciplined enough to continue growing, and humble enough to keep learning. These qualities cannot be purchased or performed. They are developed quietly through everyday choices that no audience ever applauds. Character is built long before anyone recognizes it. There will always be people who leave your life. Some are meant to teach lessons rather than stay forever. Holding onto every relationship simply because of history often prevents you from experiencing healthier connections in the future. Letting go is sometimes an act of wisdom rather than loss. Every ending creates room for a beginning that better matches the person you are becoming. When your attention is fixed on becoming wiser, kinder, stronger, and more disciplined, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop attracting people who only value convenience, and you begin connecting with those who value integrity. Conversations become deeper, trust becomes stronger, respect becomes mutual. Relationships become peaceful instead of exhausting because they are built on shared principles rather than temporary emotions. The right people recognize something that cannot be faked. They recognize quiet confidence, emotional maturity, unwavering integrity, genuine kindness, and purposeful living. These qualities speak louder than appearance, status, or popularity. As you continue becoming the best version of yourself, you no longer need to force meaningful relationships into existence because the life you are building naturally draws people who are walking the same path with the same values and the same commitment to becoming better every single day.